Everyone has a microphone. Everyone has a microphone. All right, we're ready to go. Good evening and welcome to this special meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, September 11th, 2023. Our purpose tonight is to further the work on our corporate plan. My name is Todd Kasenberg. I am the mayor and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. A warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, and our consultant who are with us tonight at this meeting. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers as able are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. It is also with regret tonight that I note the passing of former Alma Township Reeve Richard Thompson, known as Dick to many of us. He passed away recently, and we extend our sympathy to the family. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel. It will be available there after this meeting as an archived video. To those viewing this meeting via the YouTube channel, a warm welcome to you. To those present in the gallery today by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and/or unacceptable behavior and/or comments. Thank you. I have regrets tonight from Councillor Richardson. He's having a very busy personal and professional work week. Let us move to item 2.1 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on said item. In accordance with recommended protocol, and at this time, I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Colleagues, do any of you wish to make a declaration tonight? Seeing none, pretty usual protocol for a meeting like this. When people are to speak, I'll call upon them. Those participating remotely, and I don't think we have any tonight, so we don't need to even talk about that. Let's then focus on the business that lies ahead of us this evening, and I invite those in the chambers to put away or silence their cell phones as appropriate. Let's turn to next item on our agenda. I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting as follows. That the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Rothwell, thank you, and Councillor Nordholm will be our seconder on this one. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Okay, thank you. Councillor Enstedt records a manual vote in favor, and that means we have all nine, so that motion is carried. Thank you. Next, then, it's proposed that we turn to agenda item number 4. In this meeting, Council will review and comment on work in progress related to our next strategic plan for the municipality. We are favored with proposed revisions to the last plan, which serves as a basis for our next plan. And the revisions have been refined after earlier input and are being brought forward by our consultant, Catherine Osterban, from Osterban Strategies. And these, all of this reflects input from the community and from council to this point. For the next agenda item, I think we should probably have a resolution to relax rules, as we usually call them. I think formally it's called a motion to suspend the usual order of or rules of procedure. Do we have a motion to that effect? I'm not sure. Is there one in here? Thank you. Good to know. As follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth temporarily relaxes the rules of order to permit additional discussion time for the strategic plan update council workshop in accordance with section 29.1 of the procedural bylaw. Councillor Johnston moves. Councillor Andreessen is our seconder. Any discussion and debate on this one? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. So our rules are relaxed, and that means we can move forward with presentation and interaction at the behest of our consultant. So let's welcome Catherine Osterban back before us, and I'll get the AV settings just right for you, and we'll have you take over here.
Perfect. I can get started. Sorry, Todd, I didn't quite hear you there. 1 second. My apologies. Great. So thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here today. It's been really pleasurable for me to be involved in this process. You guys have all been really engaged, provided excellent insight. The community has been engaged, provided excellent insight. Your staff have been engaged and provided excellent insight. What I'm hoping to share with you today is the updated draft of the strategic plan. So this has been basically we'll be talking about a revisit to the community values and corporate values. I know at the last session, if you think back, I believe that was in July. I know we didn't get to do our August session, but there was a suggestion that we revisit the community and corporate values that were in your last strategy. So we'll start by reviewing those, and then we'll jump right into that draft strategic plan. reviewing the vision, any insights that you have related to the goals, any last tweaks or insights that you want to add, and then we'll just jump into a quick discussion of next steps. So just to remind you guys, we are updating your municipal strategic plan. That's what we're here to do today. We are in the final phases, so we do have that draft updated strategic plan. It has been reviewed by your management team, so we are in the final council consultation. This is your chance to weigh in on any last thoughts related to the strategy. Because I know we want to keep things expeditious, I'm not going to take the time to walk through the strategy step by step. You guys all have the updated and revised document in front of you, and I think we want to keep the focus on the strategy itself and your thoughts around the strategy. So that's kind of the goal of today's session, is to just jump into that discussion, unless folks have questions before we jump in. Okay, perfect. So without further ado, I mean, really, this is not in that strategy document that's in front of you. As I mentioned, this is a revisit to your community values. And as I said, we're going to revisit your corporate values as well. So right now you have a number of values identified in your previous strategy as highlighted on here. And I believe you guys have it maybe on the screen in front of you as well. So really, I want you to take 3 to 5 minutes. I'll see where you guys are at that point. To consider, are these still relevant to include in the document? Do any of these require changes around them? And is anything missing? So from a community value perspective, we have supportive, friendly, a sense of belonging, volunteerism, progressive, sustainability, prosperous, safety, and location. So please take 2 minutes, think about, are these the right values? Is anything missing? Do we want to play with the wording? And then I'll bring it back out to the group, and if anyone has thoughts, they can share that. Okay, I see most people seem to have taken a step back. Does anyone need more time? Okay, I will just open the floor. Does anyone have any feedback around these community values? Would anyone like to lead off? Councillor Anderson.
Yes, thank you. One of my wonderings in terms of how these values have been worded is that some of them are nouns, some of them are adjectives. They don't really flow really nicely.
Mhm.
So I'd like to see them all be consistent in terms of, from a grammatic perspective. That would be my preference. I feel that there's some things missing, and something that I would like to see would be embracing inclusivity here in our community. We have our own committee now that's an advisory committee to council around inclusivity, and that might not be the right word. I am open to other wordings for that, of course, but the notion of being open to diversity coming to our community is important, I think, and should be a community value. One of the things I want to think about is being connected or having a sense of connectivity with each other, which I think is definitely an attribute of this community, but it's not reflected, I don't think, in the wording there. Again, it may not be the right word, but wanted that notion represented there. Um, I also like some of the words. I like progressive. I like supportive. Um, the word safety is odd because it doesn't fit with probably the right description that we would want there. But safety could be, or being safe is could be incorporated in that. Um, I have a bit of an issue with volunteerism because the argument could be is that we are actually struggling with volunteerism to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's a good community value to have, but yeah, I'm not sure if that's really reflective at the moment.
Okay.
So yes, we have some great volunteers. Don't get me wrong, but I think that things are changing. So, and that's all I had in my notes. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Does anyone have any thoughts on that or things to add? Councillor Blazek.
I, while volunteerism may not be reflective of our current state, I think that, because we're looking at 2023 and forward, we want to be maybe forward thinking there. And I do not want to discount the volunteers that we do have, because we do have an incredible community full of volunteers. And while we could always use more, I think the ones that we have are really valuable. I like what Councillor Andreessen said about diverse being included in our community values. I think that sense of belonging and inclusivity are sort of maybe interchangeable, or could be. But the first thing I wrote down was not really understanding location as a community value. Maybe somebody can offer clarity on that for me.
And that is fair. That came right out of your last strategy. So unfortunately, I was not here for that community value development. Does anyone have insight on that? Okay, we will put a question mark beside that one. Did you want to weigh in, Mayor Kassenberg?
Yeah, I do. And I thank Councillor Blazek for highlighting location because it's circled on my page too. It's not quite sure what that's about. So that one doesn't feel right. I think it's important to point out that, values can be existing or they can be aspirational. And I think we're seeing a list here where many of those things exist to some degree, but really what we want to frame is the aspirational values that are moving forward, right? So to me, I appreciated the comments from both of my colleagues about inclusivity and diversity. I think those are, happening as we work at it and need to happen more with greater acceleration. But I think one that's also missing, and it's captured in the plan, is innovation as a core value. So, some of those I appreciate. We should think about how we frame them in sort of that aspirational context, right? And to me, when I look at that list, I'm putting the words in front of each of those. We value, and then the punchline, because there should be some kind of elaboration that's possible, right? With values, sometimes you need to look at what this means and what this doesn't mean.
Yep.
And so when I look at some of those values, like if you put the word "we value friendly," that's not exactly grammatically great, but there's a notion there, right? We value, and so I encourage, like Councillor Andreessen did, sort of thinking about what would happen if you put the words "we value" in front of the list that comes from this. Much of that is sensible. Location, I'm a little concerned about. And I would add innovation, and I would add inclusivity, diversity in those. But I think we need to do a little wordsmithing. And it's hard because values are really big things that it could take you down a very deep rabbit hole. And we could probably spend hours talking about these things and prioritizing them. And yet that's not really, I think, where we're at this point. I think, we're trying to have a simple enough expression of the aspirations we as council for the organization and for our community have.
Mhm.
That's, I think, the frame that we should stick pretty tightly to, and that could take some editing, wordsmithing kind of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking kind of based on this discussion, what I'll look at doing is creating a bit of a statement to go with each word value to kind of describe, what does this value represent at a high level. Like Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I like the word sustainability, whether we look at financial sustainability, environmental sustainability, or growth sustainability. I think they're all extremely important, especially the growth aspect, because I think our exercises in asset management have shown us that we have quite an infrastructure deficit to maintain. So we need to make sure our growth is sustainable to not only look after the deficit, but future deficits down the road. So I think the sustainability value is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments that folks wanted to weigh in on related to the community values? Councillor Rodwell.
Thanks very much, and through Mayor. So I too had the question of location, and the more I thought about it, is that perhaps the value is we actually do value our location in proximity to some large urban centers, to Lake Huron and others. Perhaps that's where the value is. I'm not sure that that's where the history is, but it was there. The other question, and it hasn't come up yet, is prosperous. Is that truly a value? I think it's perhaps an aspiration. It's a number of things, but I personally don't see it as a value. Perhaps I like the mayor's suggestion that, as you've suggested here, that we have like a sentence around this, like we value something. So in that context, what Councillor Andreessen, Councillor Blazek have also said is that we need to sort of frame that up in that context, and I think that's my comments that I would have, and certainly I agree with what's been mentioned in terms of inclusivity and diversity, as well as Councillor Duncan's sustainability. It's a crucial issue ongoing, no matter which way you put it. Economic growth, sustainability are all crucial. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Do you think with a descriptor around kind of the idea of prosperity, maybe good jobs, opportunity for residents, things like that would be a value? Or is that something that perhaps we should consider removing entirely?
Perhaps others have ideas. I'm just not exactly sure how we want to frame that up. I may want to think about it. I think Councillor Blazek may have some suggestions. So.
Councillor
I can find the microphone here. Here we go.
I like the idea of prosperity. We value prosperity because there's something to be said about every member of our community thriving. And I think that's, to me, the essence of prosperity is that every member of our community is or has what they need here in order to be able to thrive. I associate thriving and prosperity in the same context. But.
Perfect. Thanks, Councillor Blazek. Mayor Kassenberg, did you want to weigh in?
I think prosperous is not quite the right word here. I think that thrive is an interesting word that we might be able to build on. But to some degree, what we value is creating the conditions for those things, right? Creating the conditions for prosperity, creating the conditions for people to thrive. So I'm not sure how we express that succinctly, because there's that sort of ambition to express values in one or two words each, and it may be that you're going to have to search the thesaurus to find the one or two words that are going to work for you.
Sounds good. Perfect. Thank you. Any other last thoughts on the community values? Okay, seeing none, let us jump to the corporate values. So again, I'm going to ask you to take 2 to 3 minutes to consider, are the corporate values from that previous strategy still relevant? Do they require any wordsmithing, revisions? Is anything missing? So a quick reminder of those corporate values: well-run, fiscally responsible, responsive, service-oriented, forward-thinking, collaborative, supportive, and friendly. So I'll give you guys 2 to 3 minutes to think through that, and then we'll come back together. All right, does anyone need a few more minutes? A few more seconds? All right, let's jump into it. Does anyone have any thoughts and wants to get us started on the corporate values? Are these still relevant? Do they require revisions? Is anything missing? Councillor Adrianson.
Yes, similar comments to before is something like we value, like our corporation values, and then the words or the phrases need to, flow properly grammatically from that. And a lot of those in this context don't really work grammatically. However, some of their context are pretty good. So one of the things I'd like to add would be meeting the needs of our community. I know that kind of is about being responsive, but I think being responsive meeting the needs of our community is deeper than being responsive. So I would like to see somehow that incorporated. Communication, I'm not really feeling a sense of that. And I feel that as a corporation, communication is so important with our community and somehow should be incorporated into the values. I really like collaboration and forward thinking. There's a lot there, right? And trying to reduce it down would be great too. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Councillor Johnston?
I'm not sure friendly needs to be in there. It could be slashed with service oriented. They could be kind of combined into one. That if you're service oriented, you're friendly. I don't know how you can be service oriented and not be friendly. So I think those could be together. To me, forward thinking is pretty bland, and I would change it to progressive or something along that line that is a little more descriptive than just forward thinking. I don't know, could be anywhere from 1 year to 8 years, and it's just doesn't describe anything for me. Where progressive means we're trying to stay ahead and we're trying to think ahead, and so I'm more of a not liking forward thinking versus something more along the lines of progressive. I really like collaborative. You know what I mean? To me, that means we're working with other levels of government, service organizations. Fiscally responsible, I think, has got to be the number one value. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor. Any other thoughts? Councillor Anstead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, and I think the two themes that have kind of already been mentioned here, and I just want to pick up on those. We want to make sure and I don't know how we word this and what the correct maybe play words are, but that we're an employer of choice. I think we all know the current situation with municipalities. There's a lot of people that are going to be retiring in the next few years, and we want to make sure that we're getting good quality people, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. Because again, the decisions we're making now are what they're gonna be affecting us 10, 15, 20 years from now. So I don't quite know. I think we have a lot of good words here. In terms of any other ones, I would say, I don't know how we word this, but employer of choice, perhaps, or something along those lines, just to say that, hey, we want to be that employer that people want to come to. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Councillor. Any other thoughts? Councillor Duncan and then Councillor Blazen.
Thanks. I agree with Councillor Johnson. I think the forward-thinking, progressively managed, I think would be a better term for that. And well-run is a very, I don't know how to describe that term. It just doesn't fit with the rest of the values, I don't think. I understand what we're getting at, but I don't think it's a good term to describe how we manage the corporation.
Great points. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Blazek?
Would efficiency be better than well run? Maybe. I don't know. I really just wanted to pipe in and support Councillor Anderson's idea of valuing communication. I feel like that's a pretty big oversight thus far on our part, and it's a great catch.
Perfect. Thanks, Councillor. Mayor Kassenberg?
Many of my colleagues are picking up on themes that I too wrote down, so I think there's some meeting of minds here. I'm not sure about this forward-thinking, progressive words. Like, they're kind of tricky words for the corporate values. You know, as a corporation, as the municipality, for the staff, what exactly do we mean by that? And so it may be that if you amplify something, the right word will land. But I offer a little bit of a caution there. I think that, you know, to some degree, the corporate values are the ones that the staff have to use as a lens in their work, right? They have to say, okay, here's how we shape and build the organization. Here's how we bring reports about policy and practice forward to council. And so we need to be very mindful of the lens nature of this. I too wrote down the word efficiency, nice word. I wrote down the word leadership. And I think that we value leadership in our corporation. I think that's very important. And then I wrote down sustainability here, borrowing from Councillor Duncan's idea earlier, because I think that, you know, the expression that we want to send to all of our team, all of our employees, all of council, is that we are here for the long run. And so sustainability in the corporation needs to be one of those lenses that's used and applied routinely. I'm not sure what supportive means here, so I think that I would question that word. And I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Anstedt's comments about employment positioning and framing that we are an employer of choice. Finally, I wrote down a word, and maybe this fits in with the progressive, forward-thinking. I wrote down proactive, and I think there might be some value in that word, although I'm not sure yet. And then I wrote one note to myself, and I think it's incumbent on us again as council to think this way. When we've got a better list, we probably should ask the staff, how do they feel about this, right? So just maybe that's more process-oriented than reaction to these values, but it's the organization we're building. So how do they see themselves with that, right?
Great point. Thanks, Mayor Kassenberg. Deputy Mayor Cullen?
Yes, through you. I like that comment, and I think that maybe could tie into getting the employees involved, like employer brand. What is it like to work for the municipality? What do we need to offer to attract, you know, future employees? So I do like that employee brand.
Okay, great. Councillor Norton?
The word came, what was the word again? Hospital, or we were really hosts during that storm. So staff arranged beds and whatnot. I think we had 20 or so people here, dogs, also at Alma Community Center. So something to represent we're hospitable. That's the word that came to mind. Sorry, I didn't have a pen, so I didn't write that down. But that was the word that came to mind for our corporate values. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Councillor Nordum. Any other thoughts? Councillor Rothwell?
Thank you. So not to go on, but certainly Councillor Anset's point. So I had staff engagement and responsibility, but certainly employer of choice. That means not only attracting new employees, but that means keeping the ones that we have. Because we have talked specifically about the fact that we have lost employees for various reasons and so on, and you don't want to see that going on when we train up good staff and see them go. So certainly employer of choice is a crucial thing. When we think about the issues of forward-thinking / progressive, I think of our community and our councils before us. Not all communities have bought and developed or sold land for industrial development or commercial development. Certainly residential is hardly ever talked about from a community standpoint. And you look at the leadership in the past, which has been shown by previous councils, and I think that we want to keep that forward thinking, or pardon me, progressive, as we move forward. So these are new or innovative ideas that many other communities don't do that we have done in the past, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do in the future. So I think that's important that we have whichever word we land on, that it's there, and it's on that basis, and hopefully staff can think about how they want to frame that up. But we're not looking at just doing what everybody else does. I think we want to make sure that within our community, and again, I look at the word supportive, and there's the question, to me, it's about being supportive to our community, and that means our business community, and the things that we do here to help and support business retention and expansion, for example, because it's fine to bring in a new business, but what about our existing business that have been here for years and grown bit by bit? And that's when you look at economics and so on. Those are those ones that have brought you through the past on a incremental basis are usually the ones that are going to sustain you in the future. It's great to talk about a 200, 300, 400 employee plant coming to town. That doesn't happen very often, and as we know, they can go as fast as they come. So anyways, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Great point. I'll interject with my economic development knowledge. I know when we were running the business retention and expansion program at OMAFRA, what we used to say is that more than 80% of the jobs in your community are created from existing businesses, and that's more and more the more rural you are. So great flag there. Thanks. Any other comments or thoughts around these corporate values? Okay, seeing none, let's jump forward. So I did realize as I was preparing for today's session that I left out the slide for vision. And if you look at your draft strategy that was provided to you, it actually starts with the vision. So you have an old version of the vision, your original vision, and the new vision. I'll just ask that, you pretend instead of goal 1, it says the vision here. And again, I'd like you to think about the vision. What do you think of the revised vision? Is anything missing? Does anything need to be changed? Hopefully I was under strict orders to try and streamline the vision a little bit. So, welcome any feedback with that lens that we do want to keep it almost that elevator pitch level. So I'll give you guys 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes to review that vision and capture any comments if you think anything's missing. Anything that needs to be changed, anything that we can't live without that was left off. Now, by show of hands, does anyone require more time to review? Okay, then I will open the floor as you reflect on that new vision, that scaled down vision. What do you think, Councillor Johnston?
I think it's 1,000,000% better because the original one is way too wordy. I don't know if anybody can actually read it front to end and understand everything that's in it. So I like the brevity of the new one, and I think it covers off an awful lot of things. You know, the sustainable, the inclusive. We throw in some agriculture with diverse housing options. You know what I mean? And I like the last statement that we're safe and welcoming for new and existing residents. So it's way better. Yes, maybe there's going to be some suggestions for changing a little bit, but please do not make it near as long as the original.
Perfect. Thanks, Councillor. Any other thoughts? Mayor Kassenberg.
So I think we're missing a theme about doing business, creating a climate for business, that sort of thing. So I wrote a brilliant place to do business. And it sort of celebrates the business savvy that we have in the community as well, which I think is important. And then I wanted to be perhaps a little bit philosophical and say that North Perth imagines and creates a better future. There's a sort of notions around innovation, around this being a place where people can think and grow and build a better community.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor Kassenberg. Councillor Blazik.
So this is just like a little bit of wordsmithing where it says we are a global leader in agriculture and incorporate and encourage environmental. Too many ands. But if I can build on Mayor Kassenberg's idea here, we are a global leader in agriculture and brilliant place to do business while incorporating and encouraging environmental practices that mitigate and address the impacts of climate change. Wordsmithing is, sorry if that's
Okay. Global leader in ag and a brilliant place to do business. While
incorporating and encouraging environmental rather than that extra and. It became too much and for me.
Like an auctioneer going way too fast.
It's all in there, don't worry. I got it. Thank you, Councillor Blazik. Appreciate that. Yep. Any other thoughts? Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I agree with a lot, all of my colleagues. I always like to have our vision match up with our values. And when I read this, I really liked it. But I realized that in our values, we didn't incorporate any appreciation for our rural roots and in agriculture. And I think that should be placed in our values too, especially since it's in the vision, and which I totally appreciate. So something to think about, because like I said, I think the vision needs to really reflect the values.
Great point.
Thanks
for that, Councillor. Any other thoughts? Councillor Rothwell?
Thank you very much. Not to build too much on the brevity here, but I think we're missing a big issue. We don't mention the word manufacturing. And when we look at Spinrite, LTI, BTE in particular, as well as on the agri-food side, Erie Meats, I think we better say something about manufacturing or something. It's crucial that we talk about being a global leader in agriculture. But when you look at Spinrite, for example, it's one of the only manufacturing of yarns, frankly, in the world. So if that's not a reason to shout and so on, what do you do? I mean, you look at our other businesses as well here. I think we better mention something about manufacturing because we have a huge manufacturing, and I don't want to just say manufacturing because there's sales and associated services, the business to business, which Councillor Blazik mentioned. But somehow we better say something about it because otherwise we're speaking volumes by not saying it. So,
thoughts on that?
It could be merged with the concept of being a brilliant place to do business and manufacture.
or global leaders in manufacturing and agriculture.
You
I can play around with that if you guys feel comfortable with pulling the manufacturing sector out specifically.
If I can give one comment, and Councillor Blazik, my apologies. You were creating a very long sentence there. If we can chop it into 3 little sentences, I think we would probably get the job done and it would feel like plainer language, right? And this coming from the guy who says way too much and whose writing is way too dense. So.
Perfect. I will do my best to wordsmith the wordsmithing down. Excellent. Any other last thoughts on that vision before we move on? Councillor Rothwell.
Add one more. So we talked about the importance of youth in particular, and we haven't really talked about youth at all to this point. And to me, in terms of proposed vision, when we want to talk about where our future is and so on, to me, it's not just the people that are here and hopefully that will come, but it's our youth that are grown and educated here and perhaps go away, but we want them to come back. So if we don't say anything about that vision, yes, we're talking about sustainable, inclusive, innovative, and progressive. It doesn't say anything about our youth. And we've spent a long time talking about youth engagement and so on, but there's not a word said about it here. So I think we should say something somewhere, and this might be just as good a place as anything to say it. I haven't got the specific words for it, but I think we better say something. Thank you.
Councillor Blazik, did you have a thought on that?
Through you, Mayor, thank you. The municipality is a safe and welcoming place for new and existing residents. I know that doesn't quite cover our youth, but what if we simply say the municipality is a safe and welcoming place for new, existing, and returning residents? Does that still doesn't cover it?
I mean, you could even put in brackets young and old or whatever, the full spectrum, like
Or of all generations?
all generations.
Like
However, just like, I mean, because then we're not just saying youth, and we talk about later about the importance of mentioning seniors and inclusion. So if we want to pull the full spectrum, then we can do that. However we want to do that, but if that's just a suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Councillor. Any other thoughts on the vision? Okay, thanks for that robust discussion. Really, really thoughtful. Really appreciate your insights, everyone. Let's jump to goal 1. So, you know, if you review the strategy, I mean, this one had some streamlining done to it. Some of the objectives moved to different goals. If you look across the goals, some of the goals became more streamlined. So I want you to take a look at that first goal, growth and economic development, look at the objectives, look at the changes that took place, and then tell me what you think. Is anything missing? Does anything need to be changed? Are you comfortable with how the strategy has been kind of rejigged and relayed out with this goal and the changes under it? So I'll give you guys 5 minutes to review that. So it's 7:48. We'll come back at 7:53 to discuss. As you're going through, I'll just note that any objectives that have been changed have the star beside them, and the original is noted just underneath, so you can see any wording changes as well. The objective. Now, by show of hands, would anyone like more time to finish reviewing this goal? Okay, seeing none, I will open the floor up again. What do you think? Anything missing? Does anything need to be changed? How do you guys feel about this updated and revised Goal 1? Mayor Kassenberg.
Generally, I like the way it's consolidated pieces and added new things that have become important in our community over the last 4 years versus the previous plan. But I think it's optimistic to believe that there's a Perth County labor market master plan that is referenced in priority 1.2. And I don't, Matt, do you? I don't think we've heard of those. And the county councillors might have heard of those, but I don't think we have one.
I might refer back to staff. Was there not a reference to at one point there being a labor market plan, and perhaps it's been implemented and now it's like the township takes it to the next level or revisits? Sorry. The Opportunity 2020 plan. There is some familiarity? Okay. A revisit to that one. Thanks, Mayor Kassenberg. Any other thoughts around Goal 1? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you. Under priority 1.4, I would like, I don't like the word profitability as far as agriculture. I'm just not sure we can promote profitability. I would like to see more innovation, like the term innovation or something like that in there, because profitability, I think, is something that's out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
But we are a very innovative agriculture area.
Okay.
You know, I know 2 or 3 of us can like to pull out our phones and show you what our robots are milking cows at right now. So, you know, so I think that's, to me, that's something that just needs to change, tweak a little bit.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Councillor. Any other thoughts on this Goal 1? Councillor Andrewson.
In order to have access to a skilled workforce, we need to have housing. And I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it in the proposed updated actions. And housing is top of mind. It's something that we've talked about as a council. And, without adequate housing, we don't have a workforce. And we struggle with that now. So that needs to be reflected somehow.
Absolutely. And Councillor, I will just draw your attention, the housing piece I did put under the community planning and development goal. So it's been relocated there as priority 3.3.
Okay.
North Perth plays an active role in creating diverse housing options and improving housing density. I just thought that was a little bit broader than just specific to economic development, and perhaps more suited to that community development and planning role.
It could be, it's just that, it talks about the workforce. It's really hard to have a workforce when we don't have housing available. So, I'm fine with that later on, but it's just something to think about from an economic development perspective.
Perfect. I'll see if I can make the link right within the objective, or maybe the preamble leading up to it. Thanks for that. Any other thoughts on this Goal 1? Everyone's comfortable with the objectives as stated, the proposed actions? Oh, Councillor Blazek.
Housing and childcare, and a bit more workforce beyond that in childcare.
Perfect. And I just want to double check because I think childcare might be in there as well. No, so I'll make sure that is explicitly pulled out and flagged in there. Thanks for pointing that out, Councillor Blazek. Any other last thoughts around Goal 1? Okay, seeing none, let's jump to Goal 2, which is service effectiveness. So again, have a look at the different priorities, They've been streamlined a little bit. Tell me what you think. Is anything missing? Does anything need to be changed? And I think this one is a little bit shorter, but we'll give about 5 minutes and I'll see where you guys are at. So we'll reconvene just after 8 p.m. Yes.
Framing of this. So the service effectiveness, can you clarify, is that for the corporation? Is that for economic development? I'm not sure. Can you?
It is for the corporation.
For the corporation, okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome. By show of hands, does anyone need more time to review? Okay, seeing none, I'll open the floor. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments that they wanted to share? Mayor Kassenberg.
Actually, the last word of priority 2.2 is an ambiguous word in some ways. So the whole bullet right now reads, ensure municipal capacity and resourcing responds to increasing service levels. Now, that word levels could mean a lot of different things. And I think we should be cautious about what that word levels means in this case. I'll give you an example. Certainly there are individuals who've moved to this community that are within my sphere of contact who are quite concerned that we don't have green box program, for example. And the word level there could imply that it is our intention to sort of continue to spread out and expand our services in ways that is not intended, I think, in terms of our strategy. So that word might need to be revisited just to be cautious, right? I'm not sure what the solution is, though. I'll tell you that. Off the top of my head, the words aren't quite right. But I don't want this inherently to say we're good and we're going to keep working towards expanding and sprawling out our services, right? There are some places where we shouldn't go because we're a small municipality, right? So just a thought.
Is it fair to say that you're looking to respond to population growth and as that increases service levels?
I think that's what is intended.
Yes,
actually,
I just want to make sure that
in the context of, because it talks about capacity and resourcing, right? So
exactly.
As we move from 16,000 people to 18,000 3 years from now, we can't ask the same staff and the same resources to do the work that they were optimized for at 16 when now we have 18. I think that's the notion.
Yeah, exactly. So I will work to wordsmith that to make sure it's articulated clearly.
Thanks.
Thanks for that, Mayor Kassenberg. Any other thoughts around Goal 2? Councillor Andreessen.
One of the things to me that's missing from this is how we prioritize service. And I think, there should be a priority given to, public safety, environmental, stewardship, whatever. human rights. Like, do you know what I mean? Like to actually show how are we prioritizing our services, because you're right, someone could say they want a reading blocks program. So if we have a lens of public safety, human rights, like, do you know what I mean, like all the some key variables like that, then we can really decide, does that fall within our service vision or does it not, right? Do you know what I'm getting at?
I was going to say, would it be fair to say that the vision itself would kind of set some of those parameters? Because I think we could go down a pretty deep road of, like, is this a repeat of values? And then are we prioritizing the values? And is that kind of the framework that we're working from, right? Like, does that
Well,
set the
I think that's what I'm getting to, is that it should reflect our values, right?
Yes.
But I'm not really catching that in this. That's just my feeling.
Okay.
Might interject, the first bullet of the top priority 2.1 talks about the importance of clarifying and defining services and service levels.
There we go.
And I see where you're going, but I'm not sure it needs to be embedded in the strategic plan any more than we're going to have a process. We say that we will clarify and define service levels, and that's for this council, obviously, to figure out. If we want to make a rush into some new area, well, then probably almost like a lens that you're describing, or a frame, Leanne, Councillor Andreessen, sorry, would be useful, but that might not need to be here at this point in time, right? That could be a work stream that we commission in the near future. I saw the CAO get excited about that. Did you want to weigh in on this one at all?
Just through you, Mayor, I kind of concur with what you're saying. It's really broadening that first bullet point, and it's an exercise we could complete as part of the strategic plan implementation. I'm afraid of how long priority 2.1 could become if we started adding all the lenses that we should be looking at for service delivery.
And the hope is that that is reflected in the values, and maybe there's reference to the values in that kind of preamble leading up to it to say, we're going to be reflecting on our values as we deliver services effectively in the community, or something along that line. Councillor Blazek?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. That last bit that you just said, that was going to be my suggestion, that we mention values in here. But then I had a question for my colleagues that talked about sustainability. For 2.2, should there be a sustainability piece in our service delivery? Effectively, cost effectively, sustainably?
Thoughts? We do have a, where am I here? Under your corporate sustainability goal, your last priority is municipal infrastructure is robust and sustainable. Now, that doesn't speak to the depth of sustainability that you mentioned. Any thoughts on the sustainability piece?
I believe it should be incorporated because, it's a crucial issue for us to say, and I don't think there's any problem with saying it again in 2.1. That's my view.
Okay.
And once we're done that, then I'll have a couple things to say.
Great. Any other thoughts around goal 2? Did you say you had additional feedback, Councillor Rothwell?
Yeah. Item 2.2, second bullet, technology, including artificial intelligence, considered when considering new ways to deliver enhanced services. I don't have an issue with artificial intelligence, but I do have an issue is that we specifically state it. There are plenty of people that are quite upset about the whole prospect of artificial intelligence. What's that mean? How is it used? Where's their data coming from? Any number of things. I think if we just simply use the word technology is considered when considering new ways to deliver, that would be fine. I suspect I know why AI is included here because it is something which is up and coming. It's certainly been used by many, but I don't think it's necessary to specifically outline it here, and I think it would allay fears if we didn't include it.
That's a great point. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Johnston.
Question about the sustainability. Does that mean if we put it in here about sustainability that we're going to continue to do that? So say roadside mowing, we decide to tender it out and we don't do it, but if we're putting it in here that everything is sustainable, I don't know if I'm under.
It can be noted kind of in an aspirational perspective. Like I'll have to have a look in terms of like where does it best fit, but certainly it's, you know, something along the lines like looking to maximize sustainability with every action or every service implementation, something along those lines is what I'm thinking.
I do like the part in 2.2 where we took out the county and added, you know, maintain and expand partnerships so that we can, you know, it's not just within the county, it's Minto, it's wherever, Huron.
Absolutely. There's a lot of partners out there. Great. Thanks, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Cullen.
Yes, through you, Mayor Caseberg. So 2.1, where it says establish a customer service charter for response. What about calling it like creating a customer journey map? Maybe they'll understand that a little more. That outlines interactions, etc., touch points that they'll receive when they come into, if they have questions with our staff.
Okay.
Just wordsmithing a bit. Maybe, maybe not.
Absolutely. I can play with that. Thanks.
If I can, I'll dissent a little bit from that. And that's because from my take, customer journey mapping and those kind of things are research that's done to support the customer service experience, right? So the experience is the aspirations that you have, how long it will take, how many steps are involved, that kind of thing. And that can be defined in a charter or a document of that nature. To get to the charter, though, you have to have, as you said, maps of journeys elaborated upon, find the friction points, like all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. So I just...
You're happy with those words then?
Yeah, they're close enough.
Okay.
I'll play with it a little bit and see
Yeah.
if I can make sure that that's reflected in kind of the point, maybe as an element of the charter.
Do we need, in these priorities, and I'm not sure, I don't have an easy search tool for this document, to address issues of privacy? Because certainly when we're talking about services and service levels, there is a privacy aspect to it that I think we just automatically assume we're compliant with, or that it's taken care of, but perhaps it needs to be expressed in a strategic way.
At this point, there's no notion of privacy in the strategy, so if you feel it's appropriate, we can certainly look at incorporating like resident information is kept confidential and privacy is ensured or something like that, just as part of service effectiveness.
I mean, we do have obligations. Maybe I turn to CAO Snell. Do you think it belongs in a strategic plan?
We do have obligations under FIPA. However, I actually don't think it's a bad thing to actually put in a strategic plan because I think it just really ensures confidence that people may not be familiar with provincial legislation, and FIPA is a complicated piece of legislation. So even just having it as one of our priorities, I think it might give people some reassurance.
Okay. Great.
Just going back to sustainability and Councillor Johnson's point about, so the point 3 under priority 2.2 proposed updated actions, I think gets to the point. It says explore opportunities to optimize and recover costs and delivery of committed services. So that's the economic sustainability piece. There's more to it than that in terms of environmental or other sustainability, but at least this gets to the point about economics, sustainability, I think, so.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor. Any other thoughts? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on to goal 3. So this one is community planning and development. I would argue that this goal saw the most change out of all parts of the strategic plan, consolidated goal 4 and 3 together. It also pulled different elements from the economic development goal into this area as well. So I'll give you guys 5 minutes again to review. If we need more time, we can add it. I know it's a big goal. Think about, does this reflect the needs of the community from a community planning and development perspective? Is there anything missing? Does anything need to be changed? And we will circle back at about 8:19 for discussion.
If I might point out, priority 3.4, it seems like there's a word that got dropped in the priority expression. North Perth grows at a sustainable and responsible pace. Just so that we all are on the same page.
Yes, thank you. I will make that change. And I'll note, if you continue scrolling past goal 3, you will see all of the old priorities from goal 4 if you're interested in referencing what those looked like in the past. Now, I saw a lot of focused faces throughout this time. By show of hands, does anyone need more time to review? Okay, then let's open the floor. General thoughts on goal 3. What do you think? Is anything missing? Does anything need to be changed? Mayor Kassenberg.
I think it will be tempting for people who evaluate this strategy to note that housing has number 3.3, right? If the number remains the same, people will say, "Gosh, you've put housing down awfully far on the list," and so we may want to think, at least for this grouping, that we move housing up in the order of things because of its critical importance at this point in our history. That a first observation. We know, I think, inherently that doesn't mean that it's lower priority or anything, but the casual reviewer of this plan might think otherwise. So we may even need some language in there to somewhere say that this is not a reflection on the degree of commitment or the importance or priority of these goals. First point. I'm going to focus on 3.2. That's where I found some interesting pieces. We talk about volunteer strategy in 3.2. And I'm not sure that the municipality has played specifically a role to create a volunteer strategy before, but this is committing us to doing it. I'm not opposed to that idea. Actually, I think it's an interesting idea. But it's a change, right? It's saying that as a corporation, as a municipality, we are going to get ourselves involved, at least in strategizing around volunteerism in our community, and that represents work for somebody. So we should identify that and make that explicit if that's what we want to do. I also want to look at the bullet about early childhood development programs, and I'm trusting further to Councillor Blazek's earlier comment that this intends, as well as things like early on, intends active childcare provision. So we may want to clarify that because that language could look a little squiffy to people, and I think our intention is around childcare services. Now, the pedal hits the metal when we have to decide about whether we're expanding childcare services or our ability to run them in other municipalities. And that's a question for us that could potentially be on our horizon because certainly we do a good job. We have a big portfolio already, and there are opportunities emerging in neighboring municipalities wherein they may come and say, "Oh, why don't we partner with you? Why don't you run it for us?" Mm-hmm. We'll have to be cautious if we use that word expand, right? Because that could mean that we go beyond our borders, interestingly enough. So I urge you to think a little bit about that one. And then the last bullet about cell phone gap and internet connectivity, you talk in the words about residents, but it's about business and it's about farms and it's about industry. We hear constantly from our community across all sectors of endeavor and all categories of enterprise that there is some concern. And so I think we should not limit ourselves to saying for residents, but we should either back away from restrictions on the language or make sure that we cover the possibilities that business, industry, and agriculture are all affected. I would be tempted just to take the word residents out, and it's a big. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'd be tempted to do. Yeah, that's where I saw things that interested me.
Great points. Thanks for that. I will just circle back to the first thing that you had suggested to reveal the next steps discussion at the end, which really, once we go through this exercise and I refine any language changes to the goals or objectives, this will actually be going back out to you guys in SurveyMonkey form for a ranking exercise. So you will actually do a prioritization exercise around the strategy and the objectives and goals within it. So you will have it prioritized. And we can talk about, framing of language around that and that sort of thing. But so you guys have that agreement in the background or that understanding of collectively where do these rank in priority for you all. Just wanted to touch on that volunteer strategy. So you were saying, is this a role for the municipality? Do we want to go down this road? We obviously have to think about capacity if we do go down that road. Wanted to open that up for discussion, and is that something that we want to keep in this strategy? Councillor Duncan.
Would it be better worded as that we would explore opportunities to work with local service clubs to help develop the volunteer strategy?
Absolutely, we could do that. Thoughts?
If I might, I find that limiting. I think there's more than service clubs who are involved in volunteerism in our community. I'm involved, of course, with United Way. I'm involved with Atwood Lions, so I have like hats in a couple of different camps, right? And to me, volunteerism, our interest in local youth sports, for example. There are many places where volunteerism is happening, and so I'd be cautious about narrowing it to service clubs.
Interest in groups?
Maybe we're talking about
Partners?
partnerships. Yeah, maybe we're talking about partnerships somehow.
Okay.
And our role could be to sort of nucleate, right? To bring people together and then hand off. Like that could be what we do. We do that reasonably well. So the front words in that bullet might need a little bit of play, in my opinion.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Any other thoughts around that or other parts of the strategy? Councillor Nordham, you want to jump in?
Sticking with 3.2 there, exploring opportunities to enhance programming for activities for youth. And then it goes on to say, including beyond sports program. I'm not sure about that flow, so I'm kind of just thinking maybe just axe it by activities for youth. But I'm fine with keeping that too. And then also with 3.5, we kept promote greenhouse gas reduction by community and the municipality. I think actively make choice to reduce municipality's environmental footprint kind of takes care of that.
Okay.
So I think we could probably axe the first point too.
Thoughts on that? Councillor Andreessen?
On that specific comment around or bullet around activities for youth and seniors, I totally appreciate that, but I also think that we have multi-generations in this community that need activity and need programs. And sometimes I think we forget that. We have newcomers, new people coming here all the time, and just something to think about, because I think it's more inclusive when we think of multi-generations in terms of programs. I also want to just kind of play devil's advocate for a minute, just around the bullet around maintaining our small town feel. It's really interesting because as we sit here as council, there is current construction right now building Starbucks. And there are residents in our community who want Starbucks, who want big restaurants to come in. They don't want this to be a small town. They want it to be kind of a suburb of a larger center. And so I'm just putting it out there because I do monitor some of our wonderful groups out there like WhatsApp, and there's a lot of community sentiment about what they think this community should have. And it doesn't really reflect, what we think a small town is. Because I don't envision a small town of having a Starbucks. I grew up in a small town, and we had small pizza places run by, community members, and our own businesses were all very community oriented with our own residents. They weren't chains and that kind of thing. And we're becoming a community that people are demanding those kinds of services. So it becomes almost a nostalgic kind of comment. And I just want to, I'm wondering if we should rethink that. Just a thought. Thanks.
Great question. Thanks, Councillor. Any thoughts on that? Councillor Blazek?
I think if I look back at our last strategic planning, you had suggested that we define small town. And it doesn't talk about us remaining a small town. It talks about the small town feel. And you can grow and prosper as a community while maintaining a small town feel. Or can you? I don't know. I think that if we're going to include small town feel in our strategic initiative, we need to know what that means. There has to be some sort of definition.
That is absolutely fair. Does anyone have thoughts around that definition before I myself take a stab at it?
My thought is it will be quite a challenge for you. And that's because probably each of us has a different impression of what a small town is, right? And so I'm not sure I envy you a task of you going away and trying to figure that out. But perhaps we should put it up on your Say North Perth and ask our community what is meant by a small town feel and character. Find out what people have to say. Maybe we'll find something really juicy in that. But it's going to be an individual judgment by every person, I think, in this room. In fact, probably if I sat and chatted with Councillor Nordholm or Councillor Rothwell, I would get very different answers. So,
Okay. Worthwhile to consider.
So then, is it beneficial to include something in our strategic plan that is so subjective?
So perhaps a removal of that. Maybe, I mean, is small town, like, would rural be appropriate, or does that fly in the face of, I mean, when you're talking about people who are looking for North Perth to grow into larger suburbs of urban areas, like, is that in conflict? And ultimately, I mean, as the council, what is the direction that you guys want to drive in, right? And maintaining that small town, so the character of what you might think of as a small community, huge shops, neighbors that say hello, or business owners that are friendly, things like that. Is that something that we really want to be talking about here as an action?
I mean, my only comment that builds on any of this is that the current work that's being done to sort of create a brand for our community by consultants at that last advisory board, I think this notion was actually in their notions based on all of the work that they've done, the key informant interviews and so forth. So I'm not sure it's going away, but I agree that there's a whole lot of subjectivity to this one. And I'm confident now that the media is going to report this particular part of this conversation to the public just to see what happens.
We'll be watching the comment boards eagerly.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's plenty of country songs out there that talk about small towns and so on. And frankly, everybody knows your name and knows what you did on Friday night and so on and so forth. There's those that would be definitely not wanting to have that at all. But it's interesting from a planning standpoint. There's some larger centers that want to make it seem as though by their name is that they're a small community. Town of Oakville has long been known as the town of Oakville. They're not the city of, they're not the municipality of, they are the town of Oakville. They do that on purpose because they're right up against Mississauga and Toronto and so on. They view themselves as, quote, a small town. Well, you look at their population, they are put another zero and another zero behind our North Perth population, and that's about where Oakville is right now. It's not too far away from 1 million, so it's a big center by any stretch of imagination. But it's interesting to me, communities I've worked with and served with, is that it's almost like a teenager when you're a smaller center. There's those that want to be within the community that want more. Because that's what they aspire to. They see that as becoming more like a city, more like a bigger center. But they still want to be able to go home and perhaps leave their door unlocked or sit on the front porch and talk to their neighbors and so on. I think that's when we talk about small town feel. To me, that's, when we talk about our values, safety, community, sense of belonging, those are sorts of things that are talked about. And certainly anyone that's watched Corey Connors golf and so on, and the talk around, sort of the small town person that's, on the world stage, that's what's talked about is that sense of belonging, and people know individuals that are from here. And frankly, they will know what you did on Friday night if it wasn't something so great or not. But I mean, that's when we talk. But it's difficult. I, as the mayor said, I don't envy your position in coming up with that. But it's are there the points here that Councillor Andreessen said is that there are members in our community that don't really want to be a small town. They want to have assets that are bigger than that. They don't necessarily want to pay the larger fees that come along with larger urban centers, but they want to have, and they want to have other services, for example, that we can't offer due to our size of our staff or the amounts that we have on our tax base to put on. So we're on a tightrope when we start talking about it. That's what I'll say. Is that there's those in our community that think that we're bigger than we are, and those that lament the fact that we've grown far bigger than what we used to be as Atwood or as Listowel or Moncton, and let alone our rural areas. But I'm pontificating now, but it's going to be a toughie to talk about. It's great to talk about as a out there, but it goes right up there in my view when we talk about our sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. Usually that's greater in smaller urban centers than it is in a large area. And that's the reason why in large urban centers there are communities within, and that's how they gravitate. So that's what I'll say.
Okay, great. Thanks, Councillor. Great points.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this goal 3?
Well,
Councillor Ruffman?
If I might, just when we talk about 3.3 and 3.4, sustainable and responsible growth is 3.4, and diversity of housing options and improving housing density. So 3.4, the original, or 3.3, pardon me, talked about supporting the county in development of modern, flexible, and relevant official plans. So that's not specifically mentioned in the updated actions. And I know we've talked about this with some update from time to time from our county councillors, but the issue is this, is that next week we're going to have an official plan amendment that's coming before our council for the first look at lands west of the Sugarbush development, west of Highway 23. So this is a whole farm parcel that we're looking at developing substantial numbers of houses on and so on. So this is outside of the serviced urban area currently. And we are, as I understand, going to see for the first time in a long time what the comprehensive review was for all the development pressures and where growth should actually happen. My concern is, we don't specifically say this here in terms of the need to ensure that the county official plan is going to, get out ahead of some of these things, but frankly, we're behind it already because we're having an application come before we've had the county official plan comprehensive review out in public to really talk about this. Where do we want North Perth to grow? Well, we're going to have an application that's going to come, and we're going to look at it next week and hear it for the first time. And then the question is, okay, so is that where you want us to grow? Do we want our municipal lands west of the Steve Kerr? Is that where we want the growth to occur? Or is it on the northeast, or is it on the east side? Where is it? So what my concern is by saying this is that I know there's various reasons why we haven't got to the point on the public review and so on the county official plan, but it is stalling our ability that we've talked about at this council table about the possibility of having municipally owned lands developed for a wide range of housing types, because one of the specific lands that we're talking about is in the agriculture designation right now and not on the agenda. So that's problematic for us as a council. It's problematic for our community because we have aspirations to do something, but we can't until we have a county official plan in place that shows the justification, yes, we need these lands. This is where we want the growth to occur, as well as perhaps other areas, but we don't know until we see it. So that's a frustration that I'm putting here within 3.3 and 3.4. We don't specifically, like we said it before in 3.3, but we're not saying it specifically in the proposed updated actions. Perhaps that's on purpose, because the hope is that we're going to have the county official plan, as the deputy mayor said previously, adopted here in the fall. Adoption means one thing, but approval is yet another in terms of the province. I'm concerned from a timing perspective. We need housing, and we need housing sooner rather than later. So I've said enough. That's my concern in 3.3 and 3.4.
Okay, noted. Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Any other thoughts? Goal 3, anything building on what Councillor Rothwell said? Okay, hearing none, looks like we're ready to move on to goal 4. So same question, different goal. We're on to corporate sustainability. Again, there's been a little bit of streamlining under this one, and a quick review for what do you think? Is anything missing? And does anything need to change? We'll give you guys about 5 minutes to review this one as well. So we'll say, we'll do 8:45. See if we're ready then. Yes, I apologize. Goal 5 is now goal 4.
Yeah, it's goal 5 we're looking at.
My apologies. That is the corporate sustainability goal. By show of hands, does anyone require a couple of extra minutes? Okay, let's jump right into goal 5 / your new goal 4, corporate sustainability. Does anyone want to start us off? What do you think? Mayor Kassenberg?
Generally, I think that this is well formulated. I think the one piece that interests me that's absent, and I'm not sure whether it fits here or in one of the other goals, is, and I'm speaking from very personal experience, for the better part of 2 years, I was sort of in the hot seat around emergency management.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really talked about emergency management, from what I can tell, in this plan. And so I think something should be said with regards to corporate sustainability about the prowess for managing emergencies.
Perfect. I think that's a great point and probably a lot of lessons learned from your 2 years in the hot seat there. Councillor Johnston.
Might seem like a dumb question, but under 5.1, the last bullet point under the proposed, regularly connect with staff. Who is going to regularly connect with staff?
The intent would be either an HR role, CAO role, someone within your staff capacity would be maintaining that connection. Any other questions, thoughts? Councillor Andreessen.
I know that Councillor Anstett talked about the importance of being an employer of choice. And many employers today, based on our experience through the pandemic, are offering opportunities for people to work from home. And that is very valued by staff, to have opportunities to kind of have that dual, some work here, sometime here, sometime at home, that balancing effect. I'm not sure, maybe even, CEO Snell could speak to this a bit, but is that something that should be considered in terms of, helping our staff feel successful and valued? Just a question.
I would say it's already captured in the HR strategy and staffing planning levels, but if we want to make it more pronounced, we can certainly add something. Because it's certainly something we're doing now is to promote work-life balance, which includes working from home in certain instances. But I think, to me, that's the more important part, is making sure that our employees enjoy that work-life balance and opportunity to enjoy both working here and having a life outside of here.
I like that sort of language, and it keeps it a little bit more flexible. Like, who knows what work from home will evolve to? I mean, I encourage you guys. I see a lot of employers are moving towards like everyone back in the office, and I think to your point, like that balance is highly desired. And I think looking at, how can we further enhance that work-life balance to become more of an employer of choice is a great flag. So I'll look to kind of smith between the two of those some sort of priority action within there.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other thoughts around Goal 4.5? Councillor Duncan.
3, the undertake a data collection and modeling exercise. I think that's a great idea. I'm just wondering, when it says community needs into the future, what needs are we looking at there? Everything?
So that one is related to, that priority is related to municipal infrastructure. So the intent would be to map out municipal infrastructure needs.
Okay.
I can make it more explicit in there if you think that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Any other thoughts around Goal 4.5? Okay. Hearing none. Wow, fantastic. I think we've made it fully through our session today. So I just want to say thanks again for taking the time to join us to provide your insight. It's been really helpful for me. I have lots of fun wordsmithing to get to. Really appreciate, though, the thought that you've put into this. And just to kind of summarize, those next steps, I'll be taking your feedback, integrating it into kind of a final draft for this, filling it out into a bit of a fulsome final report. You'll be doing that prioritization exercise. There'll be an additional review by staff to make sure that all those changes are in line with what we've discussed and in line with the staffing capacity. And then we'll be presenting this back to you guys as a final report to council. So before we wrap up, I'll just say thanks again. And does anyone have any questions? I'm happy to answer. Okay, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Osterman. We have, I think, enjoyed this journey for the most part. I do admit that I'm earning gray hairs at the moment from thinking about the small town definition problem. But I'll be white soon anyway, so it's okay. And I'm working on my best Santa Claus imitation. So thank you very much. We're glad you could join us in person. We're glad that you gave us through the methodology, lots of opportunity to interact and offer comment, and we appreciate that very much. We look forward to the next steps, and we wish you luck with reconciling all that.
Fantastic. We'll see how white I am when we cross paths next.
Well, I look forward to that. That's good. All right. Council, agenda item number 5 calls for council direction. I think Ms. Osterban presented what lies ahead with regards to the strategic plan. Is there any further direction that council wishes to give at this hour with regards to this project? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So let's turn to the confirmatory bylaw. Of course, council confirms all of the actions of its meeting through a confirmatory bylaw. And I have an enablement resolution as follows: that bylaw number 102-2023, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the council of the municipality of North Perth, be introduced, read, and considered read for second and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kellum, seconded by Councillor Anstett. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And finally, that brings us to the magic moment of adjournment. I have a resolution to the effect that the special council meeting adjourns at 8:52 p.m. to meet again for a council budget meeting on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 at 7 p.m. And Councillor Anstett waved at me. He was glad that it was mentioned. We have our budget visioning session this Wednesday. Be there. All right. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Blazek will move, seconded by Councillor Nordham. Adjournment's not debatable, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. We will be meeting again on Wednesday for budget considerations. This meeting is adjourned.